Hello, everyone. This is John Kindervag, Field CTO for Palo Alto Networks, and I'm also the creator of Zero Trust, and I'm going to be here today talking to you about Zero Trust, the strategic approach to stopping data breaches. Now, as we look at strategic engagement, we realize there are 4 levels that we have to interact with as we put together strategic programs. The first level is called grand strategy. This is the ultimate goal that any entity is trying to achieve. So you must understand who your grand strategic actors are. That would be CEOs and boards of directors, those kinds of people. And then the next level down, those actors are strategic actors, and they're going to create the big idea that's going to use to achieve that ultimate goal. And then we have tactics. Tactics are the things we use, the stuff. And we're all kind of enamored by tactics. In fact, one of my mentors taught me years and years ago that almost everybody in the world confuses strategy and tactics. And that's something we need to be aware of as we put together strategic programs, especially in cybersecurity. And then we have operations. Operations are the way we use the things we have to execute on the big idea so we can achieve that ultimate goal. So these 4 levels of strategic engagement must come together and work both up and down if we're going to achieve our goals in cybersecurity. Now, in the world of cybersecurity, we look at that and we see that we're all fighting the same cyber war because Ethernet has made the world flat. And so we're all directly connected to the most malicious actors in the world. There are no suburbs on the internet. We all live in the same bad neighborhood. So we must understand that we have to define a grand strategy for cybersecurity that meets the needs of the grand strategic actor. And I would argue that that is to stop data breaches. Of course, we all know that data fuels the modern world, but this term breach has been redefined for us by legal and regulatory entities like PCI for credit cards or GDPR for the citizens' data of the European Union. And that word breach, according to legal and regulatory authorities, means that data has been exfiltrated from our networks or systems into the hands of a malicious actor. And so that's what a data breach is, when data has gotten away from us, gone outside of our organization, and is now in the hands of malicious actors. So in order to have a strategy, we need to define how we're going to solve that problem, and Zero Trust does that. And so this is the strategy that if you're really thinking strategically, you're going to adopt. And then we have tactics. That's the tools and techniques we use to achieve that strategy, and the operations, the platforms, and the policy, the way we use the tools that we have. Again, these 4 things must work together if we are going to achieve our grand strategic goals in cybersecurity. Now, I say grand strategy of cybersecurity is stopping data breaches because in the US, there was a big breach called the Target data breach. You may not have heard of it, but in December of 2013, we had the most significant event in the history of cybersecurity. I say it's day 0, and that everything prior to that date is BT, or before Target. And we are now living in the year 6 AT, or 6 after Target. Why? Because for the first time in history, the CEO of a major organization got fired because of something IT did or didn't do, which was to allow a data breach. So they allowed a credit card breach, and it got the CEO fired. And since that time, lots of CEOs get fired because of data breaches. And that's really the only thing that IT can do to get their CEO fired, is to allow a data breach. So we'll see the CEOs of Sony and TalkTalk and Ashley Madison and Equifax all get fired because of data breaches. So they are grand strategic actors. We need to stop data breaches. This gets us to Zero Trust. Trust, what is it? Well, it's a human emotion that we've injected into digital systems for absolutely no reason. And it turns out trust is actually a dangerous vulnerability. And it is a vulnerability that is something that must be mitigated just like any vulnerability, but it's the most dangerous vulnerability because it's the only one that is also an exploit at the same time. Hackers don't need to create new malware to exploit trust. All they need to do is be on the network. So therefore, we must get rid of trust in our organizations because we don't want those malicious actors to exploit trust. That's really what zero trust is. It's that simple. So when we look at a zero trust strategy and we start to put it together, we're going to take that idea that the untrusted network went to the evil internet and the trusted network went to your network, and we're gonna get rid of that, because we all know that bad things can come from the external network and get on the internal network. They can cross this little boundary here that we call the trust boundary. And so if I can get my electrons and photons on your network, you're going to elevate my privileges and give me attributes of trust? That doesn't make any sense. And then we have malicious insiders. Here's a couple of names that resonate worldwide. Manning and Snowden. They were trusted users on trusted systems. They had the right antivirus, the right patch levels. They had real two-factor authentication, but no one looked at their packets post-authentication, and that's why they were able to do bad things. They exploited the trust model. And in fact, all data breaches, the root cause of all data breaches is the exploitation of this broken trust model. So therefore, we get rid of trust. No more trusted networks, no more trusted users, no more trusted systems. Just get rid of trust. People will say that I'm saying people aren't trustworthy, and I'm not saying that. I am saying people are not packets. No person has ever been on a network. So this is what we're getting rid of, is the idea that people are on the network. People aren't on the network. They're on devices that send packets across the network. And so we decouple the idea that a device is equal to a person. That's not a true statement. And so the more we can get away from that mindset, the more we can actually solve the problems that we have around cybersecurity. Now, zero trust is very simple. A lot of people try to make it very hard, but I try to make it simple because simplicity reduces risk. And so there are 4 design concepts and 5 steps, only 9 things that you need to know. So first, we focus on the business outcomes. What is the business trying to achieve? This is the question that we have to ask, because we need to reach those grand strategic actors in our organization so we know what those goals are. Next, we design the networks and systems from the inside out instead of the outside in. We start with the data or assets we're protecting. And then we determine who or what needs to have access. Neither Manning nor Snowden needed to have access to almost any of the data they stole in order to get their job done. And then finally, we inspect and log all traffic all the way at layer 7 in real time. We do this automatically in PAN operating system and policy. And ultimately, zero trust is a layer 7 policy statement. That's why I'm here at Palo Alto Networks. When I was at Forrester Research working on building up what became zero trust, I realized that my customers overwhelmingly chose Palo Alto Networks as the backbone of their zero trust environments. And so when it was time for me to leave Forrester, my customers chose for me where my next job was going to be. Now, the best way to show you how this works is to show you how the U.S. Secret Service protects the President of the United States. This is an image from President Barack Obama's 2009 inauguration parade. And you can see that the Secret Service knows 3 things about the President of the United States that we don't know about the data or assets we're protecting. First, they know who the president is. They don't do presidential discovery projects, do they? Second, they know where the president is at all times. And then finally, they know who should have access to the president at any given time. So what they do is, yeah, they did have a perimeter on this day, January. It was January of 2009. But look at these uniformed Secret Service agents. They have their hands in their pockets. They have their hats on because it's cold outside. And they can be in that posture because they know they're not really where the protection is happening. They're there to be security theater, to intimidate. But the real protection happens down at the bottom of the screen in what I call the protect surface. This is my term where you can shrink the overall attack surface orders of magnitude down to something that is very, very small and very, very knowable. In fact, the protect surface is the first major tactical concept of zero trust that you must understand. So for example, on this day, there are only 4 people in the protect surface: the president, his wife, and his 2 children. That's all that the Secret Service needs to protect on this day. And by understanding the protect surface, the Secret Service can do something really amazing. They can move their controls in adjacent to the protect surface, get them as close as possible to the thing they're protecting. So by doing that, they can begin to really get better and better protection. And they will then create a micro perimeter around the protect surface that moves with the protect surface and has a reduced policy size. So the policy is very small and very granular. On this date, there are 2 people who can leave the micro perimeter at the moment this photograph was taken. These 2 Secret Service agents who are in the front seat of the vehicle here. And there are 0 people who can come inbound of the micro perimeter. If they tried to, they would be stopped by the controls, which would enforce the policy. Now, the Secret Service doesn't just stop there. They continuously monitor and update in real time. So if they see a new threat, they can tell their command and control center to update the policy and keep an eye out for a person who looks like they might be a new threat. Or they could say, hey, we need to update the policy because an important person is going to come in and come inbound of the protect surface. So there's multiple things they can do. This is a zero trust model of executive protection, and it's the best human analog that I've come up with to show you what we're doing in zero trust. Now, we get into the tactics, the tools and technologies, and we use a 5-step model to create zero trust environments, no matter where they are. So first, we define the protect surface. What do we need to protect? And this is known as a DAS element. This stands for data that you need to protect: credit card data, healthcare data, personally identifiable information, or intellectual property. It could be an application that uses sensitive data, like CRM applications, for example. It could be an asset. Any asset could be in here, or it could be a service like DNS or DHCP. We take a single DAS element and put it into a single protect surface, and our layer 7 technology gives visibility into what that should be. And then we map the transaction flows of the system. How does it work together? And again, layer 7 visibility helps you understand that. And then third, we architect the zero trust environment. We have a lot of controls, plus our partner integrations to help build that zero trust environment. And then fourth, we create policy around this. Again, zero trust is a layer 7 policy statement. And finally, all of this traffic gets injected into our big data lake so that we can then do machine learning against it and update policy automatically in real time and make this environment dynamically stronger and stronger over time. Now, a lot of people say that the VPN is dead. People who are talking about zero trust. This is a very common thing. They think zero trust eliminates a VPN, and it doesn't. In this age that where we're dealing with COVID, we need VPNs more than ever, don't we? So there's only 2 ways to send traffic across a public internet. One is encrypted, and one is in clear text. And early on, attackers learned they could attack the encrypted stream and steal that, but they could also attack the endpoint and put malware on the endpoint. And so the first generation of VPNs eliminated the ability of an attacker to sniff the traffic that was in clear text and put it inside of either IPsec or SSL/TLS VPN tunnels. It doesn't matter what protocol you're using, it's still a VPN. TLS is a VPN. But even in TLS, the attacker can ride the tunnel back to a resource and steal data. And so therefore, we haven't achieved our grand strategic objective. And what we learned to do in our modern zero trust VPN is apply layer 7 policy controls to the VPN tunnel through our Global Protect agent and our Prisma Access service so that we can reject the ability of the attacker to get access to the traffic from the endpoint. That's how VPNs should be done. They're not dead. They just need to be layer 7 zero trust VPNs. Now we get into the operations, and I'm a big fan of movies. There was a famous movie called The Imitation Game about building a machine to defeat the Nazi Enigma code. And if you've seen it, you heard the character of Alan Turing say something really profound. What if only a machine can defeat another machine? And this is what we're doing at Palo Alto Networks. And you interface through our machine from a policy engine, and this is known as the Kipling method, where we give you who, what, when, where, why, and how. That was an idea created by a writer named Rudyard Kipling in 1902 to describe how he does journalism. But we have these unique technologies: user ID, define a who statement, who is accessing a resource, replaces source IP address. We have application ID to define a what statement. By what application should they be allowed to access that? That replaces port and protocol. We have device ID to define a where statement. So that's any IT device, any IoT device, we can find them all. And then finally, we have content ID. These are the products that used to be separate, but now are built into our platform so that we can define a how statement. By what criteria should you be allowed to have access to it? That's all the advanced solutions like threat protection or IPS or SSL decryption or sandboxing, which we call Wildfire, or DLP. So we can write policies going to the cloud or going to on-premise solutions that define user ID as a who statement, application ID as a what statement, device ID as a where statement, and content ID as a how statement. So we get these very granular rules that are easy to understand and easy to build. And then we can add multi-factor authentication on top of that to validate those statements. Now, the way you do zero trust is based upon what I call the zero trust learning curve. And so we look at two axes: the sensitivity or criticality of the protect surface versus the time on the journey. Zero trust isn't something that you just turn on. You build it over time on a per protect surface basis. So the first set of protect surfaces we do early on have low sensitivity and are called learning protect surfaces. And then once we learn to do something, we need to practice it, don't we? And so once we get good enough at it that we can, where we practiced it enough, then we can focus on what are sometimes called the crown jewels or the keys to the kingdom or the high value assets. You know, I used to believe you started here, but because I have so much experience doing this, I know that most organizations are too fragile, so we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't start with the crown jewels. And then over time, we'll focus on things that are less and less important. And every organization will get to define a threshold where they say, hey, below here, we're just not going to put it into zero trust. It's not that important. Not everything that you have has to be put inside of a zero trust environment. So next steps, hey, build yourself a zero trust center for excellence that includes business leaders, not just technologists. Get engaged with Palo Alto Networks to do a zero trust workshop. And then finally, leverage our professional services so that we can help you figure out how to do this in a quick, easy manner so that you can leverage our vast experience in designing and building and maintaining zero trust environments. I want to thank you very much for your time. Appreciate your attention today.